Thank you for joining us today for the Suicide Prevention Talk session. I'm Rachel Newsom, and the counseling staff and social worker will be doing a flip presentation today regarding suicide prevention since we have a train to attend off campus. Our school nurse, Nurse Jamie, will complete the latter part of the presentation and will answer any questions that you may have. This session is aimed at our entire school community because by working together, we can prevent suicide. It is our goal for everyone to know that help is available and where to find it. So let's go ahead and get started. Suicide Talk is about dealing openly with the stigma around suicide. It focuses on the question, should we talk about suicide? By looking at this question in a number of different ways, we hope that we can help you discover some of the beliefs and ideas about suicide in our school community and in yourselves. As Suicide Talk participants, you will learn how suicide is a serious community health problem and how it impacts our entire community. Together, we will explore how personal and community beliefs about suicide affect suicide stigma and safety. And we will learn how to take the first steps to help prevent suicide and create a suicide-safer community. So this is the video that was sent by Nurse Jamie prior to the meeting. So let's begin with looking at numbers, statistics, which speak quite loudly and help us better understand the impact of suicide on communities at large as well as individuals. First, we'll look at the bigger picture, national data on the suicide, and then gradually we'll narrow it down to the state and Chatham County level. According to the latest report by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention that was just released in June this year, suicide rates have been rising in nearly every state, and in half of states, suicide rates went up more than 30% since 1999. In 2016, nearly 45,000 Americans aged 10 or older died by suicide. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death and is one of just 3 leading causes that are on the rise. The conservative estimate is for every death by suicide, 25 or more people attempt. In addition to the tremendous emotional cost of suicide, there is also an economic impact and medical costs for individuals and family. Lost income for families and lost productivity for employers. Suicide is estimated to cost the U.S. $69 billion annually. Also, while we're talking about the national statistics, we thought it would be important to include the following slide describing suicide rates among the youth. The survey was completed with U.S. high school students, grades 9 through 12, in public and private high schools throughout the U.S. in 2017. Few that we would like to highlight from the most recent CDC report is that in 2017, over 17% of students had seriously considered attempting suicide. Almost 14% of students had made a plan about how they would attempt suicide, while 7.4% of students had actually attempted suicide 1 or more times. Female students were twice as likely as male students to have seriously considered attempting suicide. Also, about 1/3 of students had felt so sad or helpless almost every day for 2 or more weeks in a row that they stopped doing some usual activities. Lesbian, gay, and bisexual youth seriously contemplate suicide at almost 3 times the rate of heterosexual youth. Now let's look at the Georgia statistics. The suicide rate in Georgia has increased 16.2% since 1999. Over the last year, there was a total of 1,409 reported deaths by suicide. I emphasize the word reported because sometime in cases where they might have been suicide, the cause of death is actually unclear. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for ages 25 through 34 and the third leading cause of death for ages 15 through 24. Last year's statistics indicated that suicide was the third leading cause of death for ages 10 through 24. Also in Georgia, twice as many people die by suicide as by homicide, and nearly as many people die by suicide as by motor vehicle accidents. On average, 1 person dies by suicide every 6 hours in Georgia. Now let's take a closer look at Chatham County and how it has been impacted by suicide. It is estimated conservatively that in 2016, almost 1,200 people attempted suicide in Chatham County. Reportedly, 47 people died by suicide. This compares to 54 deaths through motor vehicle accidents and 52 deaths by homicide in Chatham County. Among those who lost their lives to suicide, there were twice as many males as females. 2 individuals were between the ages of 2 and 19. Each of those 47 individuals had family, friends, coworkers, and others who were impacted by their death. Suicide impacts us all as a community, and these numbers, these people, these lives tell us that we as a community have a lot of work to do in suicide prevention. So yes, every single suicide act has a lasting impact on those left behind. It is very likely that over our lifetime, all of us will be touched by suicide in one way or another. Just recently, many people felt the impact of suicide when the news reported the deaths by suicide of Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain. Now, what does that say about suicide? One of the things it says is that suicide can affect people from all walks of life, and it could happen to any of us. Acknowledging this helps us better understand the value of speaking openly about suicide. When we recognize the potential for suicide in everyone, in our coworkers, classmates, friends, family members, even ourselves, then we are more likely to do something to help prevent it. Later in this session, we will provide you with more information on how you can help prevent suicide in our community.
So hi, it's Rebecca Burkhart, and I'd like to talk to you about some misconceptions about suicide. Before we talk about these prevention methods, we want to talk about some false ideas associated with those at risk. While there's many myths about suicide, we want to highlight just 5 of the most common misconceptions. The first one, people who talk about suicide won't really do it. Well, this is false. According to research, as many as 75% of people who attempt suicide do or say something to indicate their state of mind and their intentions before they act. Talking about suicide may be a plea for those people. Number 2, anyone who tries to kill him or herself has a mental health condition. This is false too. Research shows that 54% of people who died by suicide actually did not have a known mental health condition, such as depression. Number 3, talking about suicide may give someone the idea. This is false as well. Research confirms that asking someone about suicide will not put the idea in their head. In fact, many people having suicidal thoughts often feel relieved when someone asks. Talking about the possibility of suicide could be the first step in obtaining help. Number 4, people who die by suicide were unwilling to seek help. This is false. Studies show that more than half of suicide victims sought professional help within 6 months of their death. On a side note, as we're talking about suicide, to help the focus on the person rather than the action, we want to say that the person died by suicide rather than actually committed suicide, to take away the idea that it's a criminal act. And number 5, if a person is going to attempt suicide, nothing will stop them. This is false. Most who attempted suicide remained uncertain of their decision until the final moment. Most suicidal people don't wish for death, they wish for the pain to stop. To help someone at risk of suicide, we need to separate myths from facts, and that's why it's important to recognize these misconceptions. Truth is, people who attempt suicide are in pain, whether it's emotional, physical, financial. They don't see a way out of their pain. They feel overwhelmed, lonely, and hopeless. As suicide talkers, our goal is to offer hope to people, to our loved ones, and show them that help is available. This is why we need to talk about it, but this can be uncomfortable. So let's get comfortable with being uncomfortable. For many people, suicide is that S word that they want to avoid. As a society, if we resist talking about it, then we feel like it could be a shame and it could be a stigma. It's too heavy. It could be because we've had a personal experience and we don't want to talk about it. Or it could even be unconscious. Many people avoid talking about suicide and they don't even realize it. So why should we talk about it? Why should we get comfortable with being uncomfortable? Well, because suicide, talking about it, it's an effective way of preventing it. By opening up the dialogue and sharing our stories, identifying resources to reduce stigma, and making it easier for people to come forward if they need help.
Hi, this is Natasha Futch. Let's talk about suicide. Let's shatter the secrecy about suicide. Being a suicide talker means speaking openly about suicide in a comfortable and thoughtful way. When a sign like this is displayed prominently in our homes, workplace, and community, it makes others more willing to talk with us about suicide. Our attitude can do this as well. A person at risk of suicide is more likely to talk to us when we show that we are comfortable, respectful, and willing to talk about their thoughts and feelings. Sometimes we think of talking about suicide in terms of rights. A person having thoughts of suicide may wonder, do I have the right to involve someone in my problems? Do I have the right to ask for help? While a person who wants to help may question, do I have the right to put my nose in someone else's business? Do I have the right to ask about suicide? The truth is that most all of the time, talking opportunities are not about the right to privacy, the right to non-interference, or the right to seek or give help. They are not about rights at all. They are about needs and invitation to meet those needs. A person at risk is in pain. They want others to notice it, so they send out invitations to talk openly about it. As a person who wants help, you receive these invitations and you may have to decide whether or not you're going to accept and act upon them. Suicide warnings. These invitations we are talking about are also known as warning signs. Most people who take their lives exhibit one or more warning signs, either through what they say or what they do. It is important to look for a change in behavior or the presence of entirely new behaviors, especially when related to a painful event, loss, or change. Common warning signs include a sense of hopelessness, isolation, aggression, possession of lethal means, feeling like a burden, self-harm, frequently talking about death, engaging in risky behaviors, making funeral arrangements, giving away things, substance abuse, direct threats of suicide, and low self-esteem. So now we're going to shift our perspective from helper to person at risk and discuss the needs of someone thinking about suicide. Talk. We can remember these needs using the acronym TALK. T stands for tell. I need to tell. I need to openly tell someone about my thoughts of suicide. I would like to tell several people. I am aware that I may be cautious in saying it openly when I want to. A, ask. I need to ask someone. Once I have given you any reason to think that I may be thinking about suicide, please ask me exactly about suicide. Ask me directly, clearly, and as soon as you can. Listen. I need someone to listen. I hope you are a good listener. I hope you will listen to when I need to say. Now, I'm sorry. I hope you will listen to what I need to say, not to what you might like me to say. K, I need help keeping safe. I don't know what to do. Can you help me think about what needs to be done? Can you help me avoid danger I may not fully recognize? Okay, again, so we're talking about talk. Remember, tell, ask, listen, and keeping safe.
Thank y'all so much for listening to us. Now to Nurse Jamie for more.